Hello and welcome to the latest market update, this time for the month of November, with me, Andrew Dawkins, and
myself, Daniel Baverlock.
hello.
Hello, Andrew. How was your month?
November was very, very good. It was a very enjoyable month, thank you very much. How was yours?
It was actually quite good, yeah. Not too bad. I think the markets have been pretty good too, haven't they, in the last month?
Yes, they have. This is pleased to report this is now the second month of positive growth that we've had in this year, and that's only the first time since that's happened this year. So we're very, very pleased about that. And when we look at the markets in a little bit more detail, we can see the reasons for that.
So the markets have fared well in November, and the biggest market is obviously the American market. So how did that fare?
Yeah, so the American market really pushed the rest of the world to positive territory this month with hopefully the news that inflation perhaps could start coming down, and that means then the Federal Reserve signified that they're probably looking to, although they're looking to increase interest rates, probably not as aggressively as they've done earlier in the year, which is very, very good news. And I think you all know my views on this rate increase, which I think really has just risen the rates too far without taking stock of actually the long-term effects of what damage they're going to bring later on. But anyway, the figures from America have come through for November, still showing good employment growth, which, funnily enough, the markets don't like, because as more and more people are in jobs and new opportunities are opening up, they see that as a growth sign, and therefore that inflation may head higher, especially with the fact that wage increases are quite high in America compared to the rest of the world. So it's one of those weird things where the market actually reacts negatively when we see more people in work, which is quite extraordinary, but that's the way these markets work. So it's all on the back of lower inflation, hopefully coming through, that the Federal Reserve then will increase rates by less, which has meant that this month we've seen a big deterioration in the purchasing power of the dollar. So we're getting now more strength from the likes of the euro, the pound, and the yen, which have all been under pressure so far this year. So the dollar is starting to weaken a bit, which is helpful for many countries, because a lot of the world's raw materials are measured in dollars, and therefore if you've got a higher dollar exchange rate, it means that you've got to spend more pounds, euros, yens to get the same goods into your country. So a falling dollar is actually quite good for inflation worldwide as well.
So sticking with the US theme, Andrew, the biggest news, I guess, that came out last month was the collapse of FTX exchange. So what does that mean?
Well, I think it really reinforces the need for crypto to be held. Perhaps it's someone's portfolio. There may be a case for it, and certainly Bitcoin is good. It's good credentials, but the difficulty is really it's very, very volatile and should be held just as a small part of someone's portfolio. And I think the interesting thing this year has been the fact that crypto and blockchains really have been so volatile that we wouldn't want to include, even if we could buy them and put them into a portfolio. Really, they would just be too volatile for what we do. So we do need that stability, or we need them to behave in a different way to other asset classes. Whereas unfortunately at the moment, they're behaving very much like a tech stock with the same volatility. So it's something that we will keep our eyes on, but until they become regulated and authorised for sale in the UK, we were staying away from. And it's quite disappointing really in the way that they've behaved this year, because we were looking at them and thinking, well, they could actually be a good tool to use in a portfolio if they countered something else. So therefore, we like when one asset class falls, we perhaps like to see another asset class rise. So it gives us that balance. But this is not the case just at the moment.
So moving on to Europe and the UK, how did they perform in the month of November?
So it's a good positive month for equities in Europe, and I think the smaller companies are starting to come back. The European holdings, they're actually the best performing funds of the holdings. this time. So there's real life in a lot of the European markets. There's still very, very high inflation, though, here in the UK and overseas. Unemployment, or people in work in the UK, well, we're at an all-time high in number of people actually registered, able, willing to work, and employed or self-employed in the UK. So it's confounding the usual economic cycle of this time in the equation. You'd normally be seeing companies laying off staff, job centres being busy, and people being worried about the jobs. This time, though, the pressure is the other way around. It's pressure on employers to increase salaries, as workers are demanding more and more salary increase to counter the effects of inflation. The European zone has put up interest rates again, but not as aggressively as in America. And this could actually be, for once, a good sign, because we don't want high rates of lending, because lending then it encourages investment, and we want more investment to meet the demand. So there's still really good consumer demand out there, because once again, people generally have more money in their back pockets than they did pre-COVID. And this is what's causing the inflation by and large. It's that people are still wanting to spend and do the things that they've not been able to for quite some time. And this doesn't get affected by increasing interest rates. But long term, it has a dramatic effect. We can see, for example, the housing market here in the UK has started to cool as people see, well, when we're looking for a mortgage here, the interest rates are 2-3 times what they were at the start of the year, and therefore it becomes more expensive to own property, and therefore the housing market's at risk of cooling off considerably. And that's not good for the longer term role of the economy, because people like to see people moving into houses properly being sold, because then it stimulates the rest of the economy. So, for example, if you buy a new house, you need to furnish it, you need to get curtains, etc., 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 and that means you're spending money, and it improves the economy rather than just sitting on bags of cash.
And the final region we can look at is the Asian region.
Yeah, so the big news, I think, this week was the end of November, with China under pressure from its population to relax the COVID zero policy, and now they're actually starting to do that because of the severe pressure they were under to actually make the change. So they're able to travel more freely now, and we're not having as severe lockdowns as there were a few weeks ago. And this then has encouraged the markets in Asia to actually, they're growing very, very well, catching up on a lot of the growth that missed out for most of this year because of the zero COVID policy. China's still in a bit of a state with its property market and its loan book over there, but the government, because of the fact it has so much power, nobody who can stand in its way, has got great strength in its ability to control and move the markets. So the Chinese market, you're right, that off at your peril. It looks like it's been a fairly depressed year, but for the next year or two, then watch this space. It can be quite outstanding in terms of the returns and the results from China and the Far East. Looking at that, there's some really good results out of some of our companies in India and in the Far East, in Australia. In Malaysia as well. There's really, really good numbers coming out of some of the holdings that we have within our funds. So it remains a bright spot within the portfolio.
Moving on to our good friend fixed interest, Andrew. How did that go last month?
Well, the fixed interest debt, the market's been positive again. So that's the second month in a row where we've had positive returns from the fixed interest funds. But it has to be stressed, they fell a heck of a huge distance since the beginning of this year, so they've got some ground to make up. Funds have sold off a lot of their stock that really couldn't cope with these rates of inflation, and that caused significant pain as portfolios were rebalanced. New assets were brought on at the cost of fund performance for this year. So we're now seeing a lot of the industry experts saying, well, fixed interest should be back in portfolios, we should be increasing holdings, etc. But, well, we've still got this huge amount of government debt. The UK, for example, is £2.4 trillion worth of debt, and we're still seeing inflation at these levels. Then I won't be looking to increase exposure to fixed interest anytime soon. And I think it's still a very volatile class, and this is really due to the fact that there's been so much money pumped into the markets ever since 2009, and then inflation on top of this, which is just top of the system. So although it's been a good month for fixed interest, now I wouldn't be looking to increase holdings or reallocate funds just at this moment in time.
And finally, as we do every month, we look at the A.R.D. Consultancy portfolios and how they performed over the last month, the last year, the last 5 years, and the last 10 years. And we'll start with the defensive.
Thank you, Dan. So defensive over the month up 3%, over the last year down 12%, over 5 years up 6%, and 10 years up 87%. Our cautious portfolio over the last month up 4%, over a year down 10%, 5 years 14% positive, and over 10 years 127%. The balanced portfolio this month up 4%, over the year minus 11%, over 5 years up 22%, and 169% growth over the 10-year period. Capital growth portfolio this month we're up 4%, over the year we're down 10%, over 5 years positive 32%, and over 10 years up 204%. And our aggressive portfolio this month we're up 5%, over the year we're down 9%, over 5 years up 45%, and the 10-year figure up 245%.